chapter is about the reports in the commentaries of the muhaddithun, the hadith scholars. And as a matter of fact, the chapter is not only, yes, it does talk a lot about them, but it is not only specifically for the muhaddithun. As you remember, we mentioned that there is a chapter, there is a school of tafsir which deals mainly on the narratives, right, on the hadiths that came, the statements of the companions, the statements of tabi'een, tabi'ut tabi'een, the first generations of Islam. So today, based on analyzing the chapter, I would mention that we are going to be talking about more about the ways on how to, or how, what makes one qualified to interpret the verses of the Quran, the ayahs of the Quran. So let's put it that way. What would make someone, what would qualify someone to do the tafsir of the Quran? What are the qualifications? Or how can one verse be interpreted correctly? Because there are people who can just take the Quran book, right? They would open it somewhere in the surah and they say, this is interesting. And they would have the same approach, the same analogy as they would have to another book. Like they would just pick up another book from Barnes and Nobles or any other place and start analyzing, being critical about it as well, right? Having, even being in the field of academia, being very good person who has done PhD and all that, all of a sudden, now just taking up the Quran and looking at it and just, this is an interesting idea, or I don't necessarily agree with this idea because 1, 2, 3. So this kind of approach, even if you are qualified to read and to understand very well and to comment other books, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the capability of giving the right commentary or having the right understanding of the Quran in its entirety. I'm not saying that people are not able to comment or understand verses, otherwise this would be not revealed to the humans, it would be revealed to other creatures, right? So it is revealed to humans, so we have the ability to understand many verses from the Quran. However, we cannot claim the perfect commentary or the perfect understanding of it simply by being qualified to comment or understand the other texts that exist out there. Okay, so then the question is, what are those things that would qualify somebody to interpret the verse of the Quran? Or how can these verses be interpreted correctly? It's pretty much the same question, I believe. Scholars overall, and including Shah Waliullah al-Dahlawi, has mentioned here these categories, and they all unanimously have agreed on these important principles that needs to be implored before commenting the Quran. And the first thing they say that in order for somebody to comment the Quran, they need to see whether there are some other verses in the Quran itself giving an explanation for something that it might be ambiguous. Alright? If you want to understand one verse, have a better understanding, first you need to see whether there is a commentary in the Quran itself about it or not. Because if there is a commentary already, it is not up to you to give your own commentary on that particular verse. And Shah Waliullah here has put some verses from the Quran talking about this one, and he mentions, for example, قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. Do you know what this verse is referring to? قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. When Allah spoke to the angels, perfect. When He created the first human being, Adam alayhi salam, they asked him, why are you creating somebody who causes corruption and sheds blood on earth and so on? He said, قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. I know that which you know not, or what you know not. But here we don't have a description of what is that knowledge. And then now for me to give an interpretation to say, well, that is the knowledge about physics, right? Or that's a knowledge about any particular thing. It would be wrong for me to give that interpretation. Why? Because in the Quran you have an answer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered that, or gave some more explanations about that one by saying, أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَأَعْلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. Did I not tell you all the hidden realities of that I know? Sorry, did I not tell you I know all the hidden realities of the heavens and the earth, and I also know all that you disclose and all that you conceal? So here is an explanation of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows right here. And what is it? أَعْلَمُ غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. I have the knowledge of the unseen, the hidden, which exists on earth and in the heavens. All of it. وَعَلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. And what you disclose and also what you conceal. I know it all. And similar to that one, it could be a verse from Surah al-Fatiha, for example, that says, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Guide us on the straight path, the path of those who you were pleased with. But the Surah Al-Fatiha right here does not go into details to tell us who are those people who Allah is pleased with. It just says الذين أنعمت عليهم, those who you were pleased with. But then in Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about الذين أنعمهم. Those are the people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was pleased with them من النبيين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was happy or pleased with Nabiyyin, as-Siddiqeen, the prophets, the sincere ones, Shuhada, the martyrs, Salihin, the righteous people. And what a great company of this group of people that company is. So here Allah in a different verse is explaining to us who Allah is pleased with. So it's not up to you and me to give now our own interpretation to say this is who Allah is pleased with, when there is already an answer to it. And I think we can keep going more and more with this category, but you understand the point. You understand how the scholars, they view this verse. They look at the other verses of the Quran in order to answer a particular verse from the Quran. And then there is the Sahabas. There is a hadith of Prophet ﷺ that has to be incorporated. Just as the Quran itself serves to interpret verses from the Quran, in the same particular way, the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, they serve the same purpose in order to give an explanation of particular ayahs from the Quran. And if we have a hadith right there, it is not, again, up to me or anybody to give their own version of things when there is already a hadith. But then, again, we get into technicalities, whether the hadith is sound, whether the hadith was understood correctly, and so on. But generally speaking, hadith will have authority over anybody else. And then there are the narration of the companions. Like the companions, they would speak about certain thing. When you read it to you, it may seem like, for example, let me bring you the ayah of wudu, ablution. What does it say? يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. O you who believe, when you get up to do the prayer, wash your faces and wash your hands and your arms to the elbows, and wipe over your heads, and wash your feet to the ankles. Now in English we're translating that as wash, but in Arabic it doesn't necessarily mean wash. Right? It's a وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. وَامْسَحُوا, for those who understand Arabic, and even those who are not too familiar with the Arabic language, they might have this in their own language, masah, right? You do masah on socks, leather socks, or you do masah right here on your head when you're making wudu. So right here it says وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. So for somebody who's an Arab, who understands the Arabic language, they would say like, oh, okay, yeah, so I can do mash on my head and also on my feet. It doesn't say waghsilu, right? It says wamsahu bi ru'usikum wa arjulikum, though it's not wa arjulakum, and that's a very fine point right there, but I don't have time to go into that kind of detail. But what I'm trying to mention to you here is that in reality, even though to you and me it seems like it is do a mash, but in reality it is to wash your feet. Based on what? Well, based on a statement made by Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who stated, لا أجد في كتاب الله إلا المسح لكنهم أبوا إلا الغسل. Which means, I do not find anything in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but wiping. But they refused anything but washing. They understood it to mean washing. So, they understood this part of the, and also grammatically, if we get into the grammar, we can see that arjulikum and arjulakum makes a big difference. And the schools of thought, they all agree that we don't just wipe over the normal socks that we have, or wipe over the shoes like that, or wipe over the feet, but we wash the feet. Except one, Imam al-Tabari, who is a very famous commentator of the Quran too, he said that no, it is arjulakum according to a different recitation of this word. Arjulakum and not arjulikum. So by making it arjulakum, it's referring to also wiping over the feet. But by making it arjulikum, it keeps it separate, the mash of the head and the washing of the feet. Again, it's a technical thing that I don't intend to get into details of this one, but that's the difference right there. Arjulikum, arjulakum. So you can understand that. That's why it's very important to understand what these companions are saying. Because to you it can seem as, okay, this is what it looks to me, but in reality, the practice of the companions was completely something else. So I believe we can leave it here inshallah tonight, and then in the future we can continue more about these other important filters, if I can say that scholars, they would rely in order for them to comment the Quran. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.